Well, hello everybody. My name is Jean Tiberio, and I'm a nutritionist and a wellness coach. You're listening to Healing Outside the Box. Today we're on episode 218, and I'm calling it An Apple a Day? Really? But first, I have to tell you about my recent adventure. Last Friday night, I met Paula Poundstone, the comedian, and I made her laugh. And I cannot stop tooting my own horn about it because, quite frankly, I can't even make myself laugh. Let me set up the story so you'll understand the situation. And, ladies and gentlemen, it may be one of those you had to be there situations, but I was there, so here's the setup. Paula Poundstone has a podcast called Nobody Listens to Paula Poundstone. Or, perhaps, Nobody Listens to Paula Poundstone. Or, Nobody Listens to Paula Poundstone. Anyway, on one of her early episodes, they invited a guest who happened to be a survivalist by the name of Thomas Coyne. And he was invited to be on the show. But this survivalist, who maybe was going to brag that he can survive anything, never showed up. So they started brainstorming about what could have possibly happened to this poor survivalist named Thomas Coyne. And from there, they started a worldwide manhunt for the survivalist, because after all, he could be trapped down a well or stuck in the wilderness of Alaska, living on whatever bears he could run down, or he could have been eaten by a bear himself. We just don't know. So Paula asked her fans to call in and tell her where he wasn't, so she could put stick pins up on a map on the wall, so we could just collect all the spaces where he wasn't and narrow it down that way. So here comes the funny part. People actually did this. They actually started calling in to tell Paula that they have not seen this survivalist in their town. So fast forward to last Friday night. My sister and I got tickets to her stand-up show nearby in Medford, Massachusetts. As some of you may know, I'm in a power wheelchair, so I pulled up with my wheelchair van, and because I'm special, I get a special parking space near the building that's set aside for handicap parking. So the guy directing traffic directed us right to the handicap spots. Just as we were pulling up and turning off the van, a woman looking a lot like Paula Poundstone starts walking toward us. Now, I knew it was Paula Poundstone because I'm following her with her podcast and I'd seen recent pictures of her. But my sister hasn't. So she said, "Oh, look, there's a Paula Poundstone impersonator right in front of us." Now, this all happened really fast and it's like a blur in our memories. But before we know it, she's at the passenger side window saying, "Hey, how are you guys doing? Do you need any help?" My sister said later that when she heard Paula Poundstone's voice, she knew it was actually her. So she started saying really polite things like, "We're just fine, nice to meet you." Not that she wouldn't be as pleasant and polite as all get out, because that's who my sister is. But I shudder to think what she might have said if she continued to think this was a Paula Poundstone impersonator. Now, as for me, I couldn't help myself, being who I am, so I said, "Paula, there's something I need to tell you. Thomas Coyne is not in Salem, Massachusetts. He has not, in fact, been accused of witchcraft." And, long story short, we got to joking about how it's now a big witch hunt for the poor man. Although I must say, if Thomas Coyne was accused of witchcraft, I'd like to see how he'd wiggle himself out of that, given that he's a so-called survivalist. You see, in 1692, people that were accused of witchcraft may have gotten the dunking chair. Now, the dunking chair punishment was a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing. Not unlike our justice system for poor people. They strap this poor accused witch into a dunking chair and drop her under the ocean for a few minutes, not for a refreshing dip, to survive the drowning that must mean that she is a witch and therefore is condemned to death. And of course, if she can't survive, she drowns and dies anyway. I know. But hopefully Thomas Croyne did not meet his demise this way. So back to the podcast. Oh, one more thing. I highly recommend a great documentary I just saw about farming. It's called The Biggest Little Farm. It's very uplifting. It teaches people about sustainable farming, and it's very hopeful. And we need a lot of hope right now. Okay, so back to the apple a day thing. For the past 50 years, the Diabetic Association has been recommending 3 fruits per day, and that's for a reason. As it turns out, an apple a day can actually keep the doctor away. But what does fruit do? Well, a lot as it turns out. First of all, weight loss in general. At least one recent study found that when people added 3 fruits a day to their regular diet, they actually lost weight. In other words, they were not asked to restrict their calories, but they still lost weight. In addition to other things I'll be discussing, present theory suggests that a gut bacteria may have something to do with this, being that they're worker bees and all. They think our gut bacteria may be producing some anti-obesity compounds while they're digesting this fiber in our guts. No one knows why, but scientists are looking into it. So eating fruits results in weight loss in general, for a few reasons. Number 2, fruits have a high water content. In other words, high water content, along with fiber, makes us feel full. So the secret of the fruit might also be its low caloric density. A high water content gives fruit this low caloric density. By the way, caloric density or energy density just means the amount of calories per unit weight. Since water weighs something, a fruit with 95% water is only 5% full of calories. I'm fond of telling people that 1/2 of a cantaloupe contains 55 calories. So you could eat 1/2 of a cantaloupe, and that's about the same amount of calories as 1 bite of a brownie. Also, it has 100% of our vitamin A needs, 50% of vitamin C, along with plenty of potassium, which is a good thing to have in the summer months when we're sweating. There was a peer-reviewed article put out by the National Institute of Health, NIH, and it's called Dietary Energy Density and Body Weight in Adults and Children, a Systematic Review. So these people reviewed 17 studies that showed a direct relationship between low-density produce and body weight. The lower the caloric density of the food, the greater the weight loss. I'll give you a link to that study in the show notes. On the opposite side of the spectrum, foods that are high in fat are denser in calories because fat has 9 calories per gram, whereas starch and protein and fructose have only 4 calories per gram. There's a huge difference. Number 3, and I touched on this earlier, fruits are filling. People have a tendency to eat the same weight of food and feel full with the same volume of food in their stomach, and that's, say, versus the same calories. So foods that are less calorically dense will provide fewer calories for the same level of fullness. There was another study article called Dietary Strategies for Weight Management. This was based on a study by the Department of Nutrition at Penn State. And again, I'll give you a link in the show notes. In their abstract, they say, quote, science-based strategies that increase the availability of affordable, nutrient-rich, lower energy-dense foods are urgently needed, close quote. That translates to mean we need more farmers markets in poor neighborhoods. In places like Salem, Massachusetts, that are more progressive, people are taking advantage of the HIP program. I had touched on that earlier in another episode. Basically, if you have food stamps, you can use your food stamps at a farmer's market and basically not have to use your food stamps. You provide your EBT card, they add up the money for the produce, and they give you the same amount of money back on your EBT card. So you get additional food for the same food stamp dollar. I think it's time we all take advantage of that. Now, there was a study done way back in 1983. They gave two groups of people different foods. The first group got foods low in caloric density, like fruits, vegetables, beans, etc. And the second group got a typical American diet. They were both encouraged to eat until they were full. The people eating a low caloric density diet took in 1,570 calories. The control group took in 3,000 calories. In another study, they put people on a typical Hawaiian diet with lots of tropical fruits and local greens. And that group, compared to the control, lost 17 pounds on average. The control group lost nothing. Number 4. Let's talk about the high fiber content of fruits. Fiber is defined as indigestible food. Ironically, it is very important to human digestion. So what it's not doing for us, it's doing for all of our beneficial gut bacteria. And our gut bacteria do many things, including help digest and absorb nutrients like the vitamins. Our gut bacteria also fight off the bad bacteria that make us sick. Fiber binds water and helps our food move through our GI tract in a timely manner, avoiding constipation. And we now also know that constipation, in other words, food taking several days to be eliminated, may be associated with some forms of colon cancer. So it's good to keep things moving. By the way, the fancy name for that is peristalsis. Fiber also helps reduce blood cholesterol, and there have been some famous studies showing that adding oatmeal to the diet reduces cholesterol significantly. There's also the added factor that whatever people were eating when they switched to oatmeal meant that they were taking away saturated fat and dense calories. The cholesterol-lowering factor is also true about fruits like apples, as long as you keep the skins on. Fiber also slows down the absorption of sugar into our bloodstream, so it's very effective in controlling diabetes. There are also multiple studies showing that high fiber, high water diets are associated with a lower risk of many types of cancer, not just colon cancer. Because it slows stomach emptying time, fiber helps us feel fuller for a longer period of time, which may cut down on snacking. So a high fiber food makes our body healthier, even though parts are indigestible and don't enter into the rest of our bodies. Single-handedly, they are a huge factor in keeping us healthy. So, like Thomas Coyne, where they're not is just as important as where they are. That's all I have for you today. Be well and stay tuned next week for another episode of Healing Outside the Box.